Fervor of Battle Riven. Okay, so there's a lot of things that led up to this being a thing again. Uh, some of you may recall that I recommended Fervor of Battle on Riven when it was brand new, and indeed that was the best mastery for her at the time. At the time, also Thunderlords was pretty lackluster, and then a couple of things changed. They changed Fervor, nerfed it quite a bit, and despite Fervor being nerfed again with these changes, it actually ends up being the strongest for Riven, and I'll tell you why. So, with Thunderlords, it was never about the proc. It was always about precision mastery. Now that the precision mastery is different, Thunderlords is not as important. Now, this doesn't rule out the opportunity for you to go intelligence and do fancy stuff with extra cooldown. That's all well and good if you prefer that style that's still intact, that hasn't gotten any worse. The alternative got worse though, so this tree is not really that great for Riven anymore. With that said, you'll still probably run 12 points because anyone that runs Ferocity just automatically puts 12 points into Cunning. There's very little reason to put it into Resolve outside of a few outliers, maybe for certain lanes. Now this one I'm actually pretty torn on. On the one hand, Riven has a lot of ability damage. She's got 3 portions of Q, which would benefit from sorcery. Her W is also ability damage, and her ultimate is ability damage. Her E obviously doesn't do any damage, and her passive I don't believe is counted as ability damage. I think it's just her 3 skills. So you got to be thinking though, is this free at the end of the day? So attack speed, you're giving up damage for attack speed. It's not free. So I think that if sorcery wasn't here, then it'd be nice to pick up the attack speed, but because sorcery exists, then it kind of closes that door for you. Fresh Blood, obviously, very good laning mastery. Feast is also an option, expose weakness, whatever you want to go. Now, I actually think that Vampirism is the better thing to go on Riven here. Even if you want natural talent, you probably want some form of sustain. So maybe you split points, and you just want the extra damage right off the bat at level 1. Then you still want, like 1% lifesteal basically. I would probably go 2% lifesteal and Spell Vamp. The Spell Vamp is pretty good on Riven. Her physical damage spells will proc the Spell Vamp. And 2% is not very noticeable, but this does matter. Especially in longer duels and whatever. Here's another debatable one. Bounty Hunter will give you no benefit early on in the game, so I'm sort of against that mastery right now. Double-Edged Sword will give you the chance to deal a lot more damage, but you're going to take additional damage as well. And Battle Trance is basically just free damage, so I'm going to opt for Battle Trance here. There's no reason for me to take additional damage. Riven can have sometimes a weak level 1, level 2, level 3, that kind of thing. Level 6 is really when she starts to spike. If you weren't already winning the lane, that's the chance that you have to come back. So I wouldn't want to take additional damage in lane as Riven just because you're at a greater risk of losing the lane if you're going to take additional damage with the Double-Edged Sword mastery than if you just go for Battle Trance, because she's already got plenty of damage, right? Riven has pretty good damage, so it makes more sense for me to go for one of the free masteries. So you go Bounty Hunter or Battle Trance, since you're going to be at top lane so much, I don't see you getting maximum value out of Bounty Hunter early on in the game. And as always, I'm focused on early game benefits with the Masteries. Bounty Hunter and Double-Edged Sword are definitely options, but I'm going to choose Battle Trance. Now, this is the main reason that makes Fervor better than Thunderlords right now on Riven, is because lethality is not the same thing as flat armor pen. 7% armor penetration works pretty good because Riven actually has 5 AD scalings. So her ultimate, her E, which is not offensive scaling, obviously. But then that one's basically replaced by her passive, and then of course her W and Q. So if you count that up, it's 5 AD scalings, 4 offensive AD scalings, and wouldn't you know it, percent penetration just happens to work really good with that. And just because you're not going lethality here doesn't mean that you can't go lethality items. I happen to think that Last Whisper has good synergy with lethality items. I think that Last Whisper without lethality items is good. So you really have a lot of options. 7% armor penetration just seems way more appealing to me than, you know, whatever the best case scenario is for lethality now. Just because at level 1, it's only about 40% effective. So if you have like 10 lethality at level 1, you only really have 4 armor pen. So it's just not very appealing to me. And Fervor Battle. Hitting champions with basic attacks generates a Fervor stack. 2 for melee attacks. So Fervor no longer triggers off of spells. Your main consideration is auto-attacking, which Riven does a lot of. You want to be auto-attacking in between your spells, more importantly. She's able to keep up with everyone. So getting 2 stacks for every attack and being able to add AD, that means that your spells are going to hit harder because you've got more AD, right? The AD scalings that we talked about are actually relevant. So a lot of people will quote the downtime for Fervor Battle, for the new Fervor Battle, when they're trying to theorycraft against it. But you have to consider, I'm setting up my masteries to be able to win the all-in, right? And this is going to give Riven the most damage in an all-in. Provided that you're not hitting some ridiculous lethality numbers or doing some kind of cheese strategy, this is probably the better route. This is another one that's like super debatable for Riven. Yeah, she makes good use of runic armor. But you're just really going to want to grab extra damage whenever you can. I actually don't think that she needs savagery. So Wander actually gives you a good option to roam. But if you're getting shoved under the tower, at least having like 2 points in savagery might be enough. I'm actually not sure, but out of combat movement speed can actually be useful. Even if you're chasing the enemy, it can be considered out of combat as soon as you haven't taken damage for a couple of seconds. So I want to say 2 points would be enough if you're concerned with last hitting. Of course, if you really want lane control, then you take all 5 points in savagery. And if you're not concerned with it, then you can just go full points in Wanderer. But I'm going to leave it with a split. Because I value both equally on Riven. I want a little bit of minion damage, but I don't really need that much because I've got my Q and my W that are pretty good at clearing waves. Now, as always, Runic Affinity's been trending up based on what I've seen. But Assassin is another good source of damage, Merciless. And Greenfather's Gift is kind of gimmicky. I think that Riven won't get enough procs to make it useful. Should probably scales a little bit better with Dangerous Game. Mainly because you're going to be taking over certain team fights just at a certain point in the game.